Hey everyone, today we are going to discuss the Elbaf matchups. I know what you're thinking. What is there to discuss? Sanji is going for Killingham, and Zaza and Zoro is going to the port to defeat Summers. It's a possible scenario, but I want to put in a final argument why Sanji versus Summers and Zoro versus Killingham need to happen. This video will kind of be separated into two parts. Sanji versus Summers and Zoro versus Killingham, including evidence of these matchups, setups, hints, parallels, that thing, and benefits to them. Why I believe they need to happen to benefit the story. So let's begin. We can all agree Elbaf definitely parallels Thriller Bark. The post time skip in general has arc equivalent parallels to pre-time skip counterparts. Dressrosa with Alabasta or Egghead with Sabaody. Thriller Bark had a villain turning people into zombie puppets, and Emu essentially does the same thing. Both arcs seem to have heavy Brook focus and a theme of fear. They write themselves. But a huge parallel are the God Knights and Gecko Moria's subordinates. Summers practically feels like a continuation to what Absalom is and what Sanji needs in an opponent. Both are cruel and perverted towards women. Both challenge Sanji in ways of love. Now you might be thinking, sure, he's like Absalom, but why is that evidence? And that's because of the setup. Summers goes against everything Sanji stands for. Caban was mentioned as similar to Sanji by Luffy because of his ideals of love. Summers and Sanji sharing this is set up in itself, but also with Sanji's character arc for Elbaf, his desire to unlock Conqueror's Haki. We saw Summers' thorns give pain to someone the more you love them, something that would gross out Sanji, but we saw with Sanji saving Robin, he counters this. Sanji's flames represent love. They are Sanji's individuality and power, which is used as love and compassion to protect people from cruel and evil. He directly challenges everything Summers says. Love is not pain. He can unlock Conquerors this way, his power of love, to prove Summers wrong. Saving Robin practically set up this to the point where Oda is giving us a middle finger if this does not happen. Summers also has a steel heart. Sanji, the Straw Hat with the most humane heart filled with love and kindness. Fighter Summers, a holy knight with a steel heart filled with cruelty and corruption. It's symbolism at its finest. Summers is barely even a human, while Sanji is the most human of the crew. Summers even said he will get back at Gerd, someone Sanji will try to save, and could be how he encounters Summers' ideology for the first time. And knowing how much it corrupts Sanji's ideals and principles in a way no villain has ever faced before. This is perfect for unlocking advanced Conqueror's Haki, and why ultimately Oda might be making him encounter Killingham first. Killingham is someone Sanji hates, yes, but he didn't unlock Conqueror's Haki against him, because he's not his complete ideological thematic opponent. It's not just about strength, but defending everything you stand for, and Sanji stands for love, something Summers corrupts. Sanji, as a warrior of love, will need to use true love to defend it against someone like Summers. It's set up perfectly. But Thriller Bark parallels and thematic matchups don't end there, with Zoro's opponent, Killingham. This is definitely going to sound very far-fetched at this point. Killingham has already had a lot of beef with Sanji, but I still have a general idea how this could work, and it still has a lot of setup, which we'll look at now. Due to this being a Thriller Bark parallel, we could go back and see Zoro's opponent as a hint he will ultimately face. So, Ryuma, how the fuck does he relate to Killingham? Now, before I say that, it's generally true most of the time Zoro opponents have more indirect mentions of setup, while Sanji's opponents have more direct setup. As for Killingham, this fits perfectly. Ryuma can be broken down into Ryu and Ma. Ryu meaning dragon and Ma meaning horse. Killingham is a mythical dragon horse. He sleeps a lot, quite a bit similar to Zoro, and Kirin means giraffe, an opponent Zoro has previous history with, and is the name of a beer company in Japan, Zoro's favorite drink. Zoro is a character rooted in fear far more than Sanji, to where he hides all of it and finally forcing it to face it, realizing his fear of feeling Karina and the crew is ultimately where his strength comes from, is a great way to develop his character. This is about the amount of setup Zoro usually gets for his opponents. Now, I know what you're thinking. Okay, but this doesn't matter ultimately. Killingham and Sanji have a lot of setup with Sanji chasing him, and Killingham wanting revenge. It's a little dynamic going on. But here's the thing. I don't think wanting revenge is set up on its own. It needs to have more to it. For example, I never fault Wano because Zoro never met Orochi just because he wanted to. Plus, Oda kinda already followed it up with Sanji attacking Killingham already. We could see if Zoro versus Killingham starts, Killingham would want Sanji, only to be disappointed he ultimately got Zoro. And of course, creating a woman as his main opponent, someone Sanji can't hurt, this ties into Zoro versus Summers too. Sanji's love, ultimately the best way to defeat Summers, is something Zoro lacks. which makes me think that the theme of the rings of this arc is simple: doing what each other can't. Sanji can't defeat Zaza because he can't disobey his code, and Zoro can't defeat Salmers because he lacks the power of love. I know what you're thinking again. Why the hell should the rings lose another fight in Elbaf? But I don't think it will be a real loss. More of a, I understand my opposite ring is more capable for this situation, and ultimately the rings will switch their matchup. Now, is this far-fetched? To be honest, not as much as people say. If we look at early chapters of Elbaf, all setup pointed to Sanji versus Somers and Zoro versus Killingham. Only a few chapters have set up the other direction. If we look at organic events of Sanji versus Killingham, it's Sanji beats Killingham in one shot, Daddy Emu comes to help, and then Killingham is strong now. And that pushes Sanji to unlock Conqueror's Haki. What is the character writing in that? There's a power scaling reason. Sanji didn't unlock Conquerors the first time because Killingham was not strong enough to push Sanji. But now with Omen, he will be. But that's not enough, at least to me. Now, I will not deny the possibilities of Zoro versus Somers and Sanji versus Killingham. This really could be it. But if that's the case, why the middle fingers from Oda? It makes no sense to me why set up these perfect thematic foils for their opponents if you're just not going to do it. Was it an accident? A coincidence? Did he change his mind as he went on? I don't know. But those previous setup chapters still exist and they need their follow through, or he's not delivering on set expectations. But with that being said, let's give a little bit of time analyzing these fights to make it a bit more fair. For Zoro versus Somers, it could be interesting to see Zoro fight an evil Sanji. Almost. We could see what the Death Pack means to him and how much Sanji pushes him, knowing how thankful he truly is for his lev-headed crewmate to be a Sanji and not a statistic evil cool guy like Somers. Is this amazing? Not really. And I don't know why Oda would do this over Sanji versus Somers, but it is somewhat interesting, even if I feel it belongs in more like a filler One Piece movie. Now, as for Sanji versus Killingham, the biggest issue with this fight, as I said before, was Sanji already beat Killingham. It's going to be hard to justify thematically why Sanji unlocked Conquerors on Killingham this time instead of last time. But I kind of see what Oda might be doing. We see Zaza holding on the children of Elbaf in front of their mothers. Seems in line as to why Sanji needs Conquerors to defeat Killingham and save the love between children and their parents. Furthermore, an explanation why Killingham has so much references to Zoro if he's going to fight Sanji could be how Killingham summons a, Zoro MMA thing maybe. What if that's Sanji's fear? If his Germa forces him to go too far, the Death Pack has to be initiated. If Zoro is set up to fight an evil Sanji this arc, it's only fair Sanji fights an evil Zoro. And it somewhat redeems the complete misstep of setup these fights had before. It's decent, but as I said many times, the proper, more thematic matchups, they just make more sense to me and have a much higher ceiling in terms of how good they can be. Notice how I talked about the situation of Sanji versus Killingham and Killingham's powers rather than Killingham himself as a character, because in that relation, Somers is Sanji's thematic foil. His opposite, Oda made a match in heaven for them to fight, especially in relation to his Conqueror's Awakening. Like, if you want to look at Sanji's previous power-up, Ifrit, we saw it in terms of Sanji's self-love and acceptance. Instead of being ashamed of his Germa past, he accepts it as part of his humanity, and that comes with loving your entire self. Sanji versus Somers could be this embracing Sanji as a preacher and warrior of love. It was set up too. That's why no matter how good Sanji versus Killingham is, which again, could be a 10 out of 10 fight, could be critiqued for not capitalizing on the potential setup he had for the other matchup. But more on that, just to be clear, I am not a story didn't go my way, so One Piece must be bad kind of guy. In fact, before Elbaf, if you told me this arc would be about the Straw Hats defending it from God Knights, I would have told you that's a terrible idea. But look at me now. He made, to me, one of the most interesting matchups he's ever done. But switching them, it just does not click with me. Even if Somers versus Zoro is good and Sanji versus Killingham is great, he will be critiqued for setting up the matchups he ultimately did not fall through with. I still have hope that can happen. Nothing is set in stone yet, but it's also likely that there will be no switch and that this is the end. Could they be decent fights? Absolutely. Sanji unlocking Conquerors in particular will be cool no matter who he fights, but capitalizing on the best potential, like the Somers fight, should be the priority. That's about it. I have hope for these matchups, even though I can't deny Oda definitely can do the other direction if he wants. I'm just someone who loves One Piece and wants what's best for it. Thank you for watching.